When my husband left for a business trip, I didn't think twice about staying back to care for his aging father. It felt like the right thing to do until the moment he called out from the bathroom asking for help with his shower. At first I froze. It was innocent, or so I thought, but the way he looked at me, the hesitation in his voice, and the warmth of the steam curling between us, it all changed. That one small favor led to something I can never take back. If only I had said no. When my husband Derek told me he had to leave town for a week-long conference in Chicago, I didn't protest. He worked hard, and this was a big opportunity for him. We'd only been married for a little over 2 years, but I'd grown close to his family, especially his father, Glenn. Glenn was in his late 60s, recovering from a hip surgery that made getting around a challenge. He had insisted on staying at our place temporarily after the procedure instead of hiring a nurse or moving into an assisted living facility. "I don't want strangers fussing over me," he said with that signature smirk of his. "Besides, you two have the space." I'd agreed, maybe too quickly. Glenn had always been polite, reserved, and charming in a way that made you feel seen. But I'd never spent more than a few hours alone with him before Derek's trip. Now, with just the two of us in the house, things felt different. The first 2 days went smoothly. Glenn mostly kept to himself, reading the newspaper in the mornings, watching TV in the afternoons. I cooked for him, checked his medications, and occasionally helped him navigate from the living room to the bathroom using his walker. On the third evening, I noticed he seemed more tired than usual. His steps were slower and he winced each time he shifted on the couch. I asked him if he was okay. "I think I overdid it trying to reach the soap earlier," he admitted, rubbing his side. "I might need some help getting into the shower tomorrow." I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Help could mean a lot of things, but I nodded slowly, hiding my discomfort behind a practiced smile. "Of course, whatever you need." That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the moment Glenn asked for help, the way his eyes briefly met mine, searching for reassurance. It was innocent, I told myself. Practical, but something about it left a strange flutter in my chest. The next morning, I helped him to the bathroom as promised. I made sure the floor was dry, laid out a towel, and brought him a fresh change of clothes. I stood outside the door while he undressed inside, talking to him through the thin wood. "You doing okay in there?" I called out. "Almost," he replied. "Could you just hand me that washcloth on the sink?" I reached in, eyes averted, and handed it over. His hand brushed mine lightly, and I felt a pulse of something. Heat, maybe awareness. I quickly backed away and shut the door. That afternoon, things felt strangely quiet between us. Glenn watched a documentary while I pretended to focus on my laptop, but my eyes kept drifting toward him. He still looked strong under his age, a broad frame, a salt and pepper beard that was neatly trimmed, and surprisingly warm brown eyes. I hated myself for noticing. That night, I made spaghetti. We sat across from each other at the table, clinking our forks against the plates in near silence. Glenn finally looked up. "I appreciate you doing all this, you know," he said, his voice softer than usual. "I'm not used to being taken care of." I smiled gently. "It's nothing. Your family," he chuckled. "Still, I'm lucky Derek married someone like you." The compliment lingered in the air longer than it should have. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and looked down at my plate, suddenly shy. The next few days blurred into a rhythm. I'd help him get to the bathroom, stay nearby just in case, and leave clothes ready for him. Each time I tried to be clinical, detached, but it became harder when I started noticing how Glenn would glance at me when I bent to pick something up, or how his hand would sometimes rest just a second too long when I helped him to his feet. Was I imagining it? One morning, as I helped him walk to the kitchen, he stumbled slightly. I instinctively grabbed his arm, steadying him. He leaned into me for a moment, and I could feel the weight of him, the warmth. When he pulled back, our faces were only inches apart. "Thank you," he murmured. I nodded, unable to say anything. I was aware of his scent, soap, and something undeniably masculine. That night, I called Derek. We chatted briefly, and he sounded distracted. I didn't tell him how I felt off balance in his absence or how Glenn's presence was starting to take up more space in my mind than I wanted to admit. The next morning, I found Glenn sitting on the edge of his bed looking frustrated. I'm sorry, he said, but I think I'll need a little more help today. My shoulder's acting up. I can't lift it properly. I swallowed. With your shower? He nodded slowly. I stood there for a long second. Then I nodded, brushing past my anxiety. Okay, let's just take it step by step. In the bathroom, the air quickly filled with steam. Glenn stood behind the frosted glass, his silhouette hazy. Can you pass me the shampoo? He asked. I stepped inside slightly, not looking directly at him. He reached for the bottle, but his finger slipped and it tumbled to the floor. Reflexively, I bent to pick it up, and in that instant, I could beneath the surface. I backed out quickly, heart pounding. In my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, knees trembling. Something was changing between us, and I wasn't sure I had the strength or clarity to stop it. The next day, everything felt different. I couldn't explain it, but something had shifted. An invisible line had been drawn, or perhaps crossed. Glenn and I both seemed to sense it. We still moved through the same routines. Breakfast, medication, light conversation. But now there were pauses where there hadn't been before. Moments that lingered just a little too long. At breakfast, Glenn reached for his coffee and his fingers accidentally brushed mine. We both froze. The touch was brief, meaningless in theory, but it sent a pulse of warmth up my arm. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, and we both quickly looked away. I tried to busy myself with cleaning, folding laundry, anything to distract my mind. But it was no use. Every time I walked by the living room, where Glenn reclined with a pillow behind his back, I felt his eyes follow me. Not in a leering way, just observant, intentional. And I hated that I noticed. Hated even more that it made me feel something. That night, I found myself standing longer in front of the mirror. I'd pulled my hair back into a loose bun and had slipped into my soft robe before bed, but I suddenly felt exposed. I tied it tighter around my waist, wondering why I even cared what I looked like. As I passed Glenn's room on the way to mine, his door creaked open slightly. He must have heard me. I paused, torn between retreating quietly or checking on him. Before I could decide, I heard his voice. Is that you, Maya? Yeah, I said, peeking in. You need anything? He sat upright in bed, his reading glasses perched low on his nose, a novel in his hand. No, just couldn't sleep. Me neither, I admitted. He motioned gently. Come in if you want. I hesitated, then stepped inside. The room smelled faintly of his cologne. Clean, masculine. The lamp cast a warm glow, softening the hard lines of his face. I was just thinking, he said. How strange it is relying on someone again. You go through life being the strong one, the capable one. Then suddenly it's like the world flips. I nodded. It's not weakness. Everyone needs help sometimes. He looked at me, really looked. You've been so patient. I don't know how to thank you for all of this. It's okay, I said. But the way he held my gaze made my voice falter. I mean it, he added. You didn't sign up for this? Not really. His hand was resting on the blanket now, palm open, fingers relaxed. I stared at it for a moment too long before snapping out of it. Well, I said, standing. Let me know if you need anything. I should get some sleep. He gave a quiet smile. Good night, Maya. I closed the door behind me, pulse racing. The next day, I avoided being alone with him. I let him sleep in and kept myself in the kitchen most of the morning. But by afternoon, Glenn called out from the hall. Maya, I walked over, heart already speeding up. I think I need to shower again, he said. I know it's a lot to ask. It's okay, I replied softly, already knowing I wouldn't say no. I set everything up just like before. Towel, clean clothes, slip-roof mat. But this time the air between us felt heavier. Charged. He stepped inside the bathroom and I stood just outside listening to the water run. But then I heard it, an abrupt muffled curse. Everything okay? I asked. I dropped the soap again, he muttered. And I can't bend down with this hip. My breath caught. Do you want me to? There was a long pause. If you don't mind, he said, voice quieter now. Just quickly. I pushed open the door slowly, eyes carefully averted. The frosted glass only showed his shape, but it was enough to stir something in me. I reached down for the soap without looking and handed it in through the glass. His hand took mine steadier this time. Longer. Thanks, he said. I turned to leave, but then I heard him sigh. Maya. I stopped. Do you ever feel lonely? He asked. I swallowed. Sometimes even with someone beside you. I didn't answer. He continued, after your mother-in-law died, I thought I'd never want to be near anyone again. But your kindness makes it hard to forget what I've been missing. My fingers curled around the doorframe. I knew I should say something, anything to steer the moment back to safe ground, but I didn't. I couldn't. I should go, I finally said. His voice was soft. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make things uncomfortable. You didn't, I whispered, then left. That night, I dreamed of him. Not in any obvious vulgar way, just moments. The brush of his hand. The way he looked at me when I handed him a towel. The curve of his mouth when he smiled. The dreams left a strange ache behind when I carried into the next day like a secret. 2 more days passed. Tension filled the house like steam, thick and visible, clinging to the walls. We didn't speak of what had passed. But every glance, every touch, every shared silence felt like a continuation of a conversation neither of us dared to voice aloud. On the 5th day, a storm hit. Rain pounded the windows and thunder echoed across the sky. Glenn and I sat together on the couch, a movie playing on low volume between us. Lightning flashed outside. He turned to me, his voice barely above a whisper. I haven't felt this alive in years. I looked at him. What do you mean? He leaned in, not quite touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat of him. You remind me that I'm still a man, not just an old body recovering in someone else's home. My breath hitched. Glenn, I know it's wrong, he said. I know, but I can't stop thinking about the way you look at me, the way you care. I'm married, I said weakly. He nodded. And I'm your father-in-law. But we're also 2 people who feel things. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear the storm anymore. The walls of the house felt like they were closing in. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, I said. He leaned back slightly, not retreating, just giving me space. I know, he said. Neither did I. But we both knew it was already too late for that. The storm didn't let up for hours. Rain beat down relentlessly, blurring the windows like nature's curtain. Inside the house it was quiet, too quiet. I told myself to go to bed, to put on a face mask, scroll through my phone, do anything but stay on that couch with Glenn. But I didn't move. He didn't either. We both sat there trapped, not just by the weather outside, but by the weight of everything unspoken between us. I should get some rest, I said finally, barely above a whisper. He nodded, but neither of us made a move to stand. Instead, he reached out slowly, deliberately, and placed his hand over mine. It was such a simple gesture, but the heat from his skin traveled up my arm like fire. I could have pulled away. I should have, but I didn't. My body stayed frozen except for the way my fingers curled into his, betraying the chaos inside me. Maya, he said, voice low and rough. Tell me to stop. I looked at him, at the lines in his face, the sadness behind his eyes, the hunger he didn't bother to hide anymore. But I didn't say anything. I couldn't. He leaned in cautiously at first, giving me time to object. I didn't. His lips met mine, soft, patient, almost reverent. It was a kiss that didn't belong to either of us. Not really, but it happened. And when it broke, I didn't feel relief. I felt like I'd crossed a border I could never uncross. He touched my cheek. You're not just a daughter-in-law to me. You're a woman. A beautiful woman. I stood up quickly, my breath coming in shallow gasps. This can't happen, I said. He nodded solemnly. But it already did. I escaped to my room and locked the door. I leaned against it, heart hammering, head spinning. I felt sick, angry, guilty, but mostly I felt alive. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I avoided him. I cleaned in silence. Made breakfast like nothing had changed. But it had, and we both knew it. At lunch he said softly, "You're upset." No, I replied too quickly. "I'm fine." "You're not," he said gently. "You're ashamed." I flinched. Shouldn't I be? He didn't answer. Just looked at me with a calm I didn't understand. "I've never looked at you that way," I whispered. "Not before." "But you do now," he said. I bit my lip. "This is wrong." "Then let's not lie to ourselves about it," he said. We keep things appropriate for both our sakes. And for a few days we did. He was respectful, kind, careful not to let his hand linger too long or his glances stray. But it didn't matter because the tension had already rooted itself in the quiet moments. The way he smiled when I handed him his tea. The accidental brushes of our hands. The way his voice dipped lower when we were alone. Then one morning I was changing his bandage. I'd done it a dozen times before, his towel secure around his waist, my hands steady as I worked. But that day I fumbled. My fingers trembled as I peeled the gauze. His skin was warm beneath my touch, and I tried not to notice the way his muscles twitched. He looked up at me, eyes dark. "Maya," he said. I stepped back. "I can't, but you want to." "Don't," I warned. He stood, then slowly with effort. The towel fell slightly, but he caught it. I averted my eyes, but not quickly enough. "I think about you at night," he said. "Stop it," I said, voice barely holding steady. "You do too. Don't lie." I backed away. "This ends here. Whatever this is. It ends." But I didn't leave. He stepped closer. My back hit the wall. "You want this?" he whispered. "And I want you." His mouth hovered inches from mine. My resolve cracked. Then, just when his lips brushed mine, I heard the front door slam. My husband. Panic ripped through me. "Get dressed," I hissed, heart leaping into my throat. I darted out of the room, smoothing my clothes, wiping my lips even though they hadn't been kissed. "Babe," came his voice. "In here," I called from the kitchen, forcing calm into my tone. He walked in damp from the rain. A tired smile on his face. "Flight got in early. Thought I'd surprise you." I forced a smile. "You did." As he hugged me, I could still feel the heat of Glenn's almost touch on my skin. For the rest of the evening, I played the perfect wife. I asked about his trip, made dinner, even laughed at his jokes. But every time he turned his back, my eyes wandered to the hallway, to Glenn's closed door, to the secrets that now lived between its hinges. That night, as my husband slept beside me, I lay wide-eyed, haunted. What had I done? Nothing. Not really, but everything too. The next morning, Glenn was quiet, distant. He nodded politely when I offered him tea. Kept conversation minimal. And yet, when our eyes met over the rim of his cup, there was a heat there. A promise, one that terrified me. I found myself dressing with more care, fixing my hair differently, putting on lip gloss before coming downstairs. Why? Why was I doing this? My husband was right there, loving, loyal, unaware. But Glenn, he saw me. Not as a caretaker, not as someone's wife, as a woman. One afternoon, my husband left for errands. Glenn and I were alone again. He watched me from the couch. I tried to clean, to stay busy, to avoid the pole. But then he spoke. "Do you think about that kiss?" I froze. "You promised we'd stop." "I did," he said. "But you didn't." I turned to him, voice shaking. "You're my father-in-law." He stood slowly, walking toward me. "But I'm also a man, and you're not just my daughter-in-law anymore." "I have a husband," I whispered. "And yet," he said, "you're still standing here." I looked at him, and all the tension from the past 2 weeks exploded between us. His hands reached for my waist. I didn't stop him. And this time we didn't stop at a kiss. The morning after, sunlight streamed in like nothing had changed. But everything had. I sat on the edge of my bed, sheets tangled around me, feeling raw, exposed. My husband hummed in the kitchen, making breakfast like any other day. And Glenn, he was silent, distant, as if last night hadn't happened, as if he hadn't held me like I was something he couldn't live without. But now that it was over, the weight of what we'd done began to crush me. This wasn't a fantasy anymore. It was a betrayal. A line crossed that could never be uncrossed. I avoided Glenn for days. Guilt gnawing at me like an open wound. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Every time my husband kissed my cheek, I flinched. Every time he laughed, my heart ached. One evening, Glenn asked to speak with me alone. I followed him to the porch, heart pounding. "I'm leaving," he said simply. "I found a live-in facility. I move in next week." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "I'm sorry," he added. "For everything." "I let it happen," I whispered. "I wanted it too." He shook his head. "Doesn't make it right." I watched him walk away knowing I'd never see him the same again. And I'd never see myself the same either. Some secrets don't stay buried. Some sins don't wash off in the shower. I helped him once and I'll carry that moment with me forever.